The ship moved through the darkness between stars like a silver needle through black cloth. Inside, Ambassador Kethva of the Sarai stood at the viewing window and watched the lights of distant suns pass by. She had traveled across the galaxy many times in her 300 years of life. She had seen wonders that would make younger beings weep with joy. But today, she felt something she had not felt in a very long time. She felt afraid. The message had come to her 7 days ago. It arrived on her private channel, encrypted with codes that only the highest members of the Concord of 12 could use. The message was simple. It contained only coordinates and a single word, come. The coordinates pointed to Omnith Prime, the ancient world where the galactic archives were kept. Kethva had visited the archives many times before. She had studied the histories of 1,000 species there. She had read about wars that burned across entire star systems and peace treaties that lasted for 10,000 years. The archives held the memory of the galaxy itself, but she had never been summoned like this. She had never been called in secret. Her ship slowed as it approached Omnith Prime. The planet hung in space like a gray pearl, its surface covered with the silver domes of the archive buildings. No one lived on Omnith Prime except the keepers, the ancient machines that maintained the records. The planet existed for one purpose only, to remember. Kethva landed her ship on a platform near the central archive. The air outside was thin and cold, but her suit kept her warm. As she walked toward the entrance, the doors were tall, made of a metal that had not been manufactured for 50,000 years. They opened as she approached, recognizing her genetic signature. Inside, the archive stretched away into darkness. Rows of data crystals lined the walls, each one containing more information than 1,000 libraries. Floating lights followed Kethva as she walked, lighting her path through the maze of knowledge. She walked for a long time. The archive was larger than most cities, and the section she needed was deep inside, in a part of the building that few beings ever visited. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. Finally, she reached a door. It was smaller than the others, made of simple gray metal. There were no markings on it, no signs to tell visitors what lay inside. But Kethva knew this was the place. Her hands trembled slightly as she pressed them against the surface. The door did not open. A voice spoke from the walls around her. It was the voice of the archive itself, ancient and without emotion. This section is sealed by order of the first founders. Access requires authorization from the Concord Council. Kethva pulled a small crystal from her pocket. It glowed with a soft blue light. I have authorization, she said. Council Override Code 773. There was a long pause. Kethva could almost feel the archive thinking, searching through its ancient protocols. Then the voice spoke again. Authorization accepted. Warning. The contents of this section have been classified as dangerous to galactic stability. Do you wish to proceed? ***. Kethva took a deep breath. Yes. The door slid open. The room inside was small and dark. A single pedestal stood in the center, holding a data crystal that was different from all the others Kethva had seen. This crystal was black, so dark that it seemed to swallow the light around it. She walked toward it slowly, her heart beating fast in her chest. She reached out and touched the crystal. Information flooded into her mind. Images, sounds, records, and memories poured through her consciousness like a river breaking through a dam. She saw stars she did not recognize. She saw ships of designs that existed in no database. She saw beings, strange, soft-skinned beings with 2 arms and 2 legs and eyes that held emotions she could not name. And she saw a word, a name, a species, humanity. Kethva pulled her hand back from the crystal. She was breathing hard now, her body shaking. This was impossible. The Concord of 12 had existed for over 100,000 years. Every spacefaring species in the galaxy was a member. There were no others. There could not be others. But the records were clear. There had been a 13th species. A species that had discovered faster-than-light travel 87,000 years ago. A species that had made contact with the founders themselves. A species that had been erased. Ketva touched the crystal again, more carefully. This time, she let the information flow into her mind more slowly, studying each piece as it came. She saw the early records first, the first detection of human radio signals, the first probes sent to study their world, the first careful plans for contact. The humans had lived on a small blue planet orbiting an ordinary yellow star. The planet was called Earth, and it was located in an outer arm of the galaxy, far from the great civilizations of the core worlds. The humans had been alone for their entire history, developing slowly, fighting wars among themselves, dreaming of the stars. When they finally reached those stars, they had been full of hope. The records showed their first ships, clumsy, primitive things that barely worked. But the humans had not cared about their ships' limitations. They had cared only about exploring, about discovering, about meeting whoever else might be out there in the darkness. And they had found the Concord. Ketva watched the records of first contact. She saw human ambassadors meeting with the founders, their faces full of wonder and joy. She saw gifts being exchanged, human art and music traded for star maps and technology. She saw the beginning of what should have been a beautiful friendship between species. But something had gone wrong. The records became darker as Ketva continued to read. She saw warnings being sent. She saw emergency meetings being held. She saw fear spreading through the Concord like a disease. And then she saw why. The images that followed would stay with Ketva for the rest of her life. She saw human colonies burning. She saw children dying in the vacuum of space. She saw 17 billion lives ended in 6 months by the Cathmari Dominion, a species that had believed the young humans would be easy prey. The Cathmari had been wrong. Ketva watched what happened next with growing horror. She saw humanity change. She saw their joy turn to grief, and their grief turn to something else, something cold and hard and terrible. She saw them rebuild their ships. She saw them study their enemies' weapons and make them better. She saw them create new technologies that should have taken thousands of years to develop. And then she saw them go to war. The human counterattack was unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. They did not fight the way other species fought. They did not seek surrender or negotiation. They did not stop when they had won. They kept going. They kept pushing. They kept destroying until there was nothing left to destroy. The Cathmari Dominion had ruled 400 worlds. They had conquered dozens of species. They had existed for 2 million years. The humans wiped them out in 18 months. Not defeated, not conquered, wiped out Every ship, every colony, every world, every single member of the Cathmari species was killed. The humans erased them from the galaxy as completely as if they had never existed. And when it was over, the humans did not celebrate. They did not mourn. They simply looked up at the stars with eyes that had changed forever, and they began to prepare for the next war. Ketva pulled her hand from the crystal. She could not read anymore. Her mind was overwhelmed, her emotions in chaos. She had seen genocides before in the archives. She had studied the great wars of galactic history. But she had never seen anything like this. The humans had not just won a war. They had become something new, something that terrified even the ancient founders who had seen civilizations rise and fall for millions of years. She touched the crystal one more time. She needed to know the rest. She needed to understand why the humans had been erased from history, why their world had been sealed away, why the galaxy had chosen to forget them. The final records were different from the others. They were not official documents or military reports. They were personal messages, private thoughts recorded by the founders themselves. Ketva read them with a growing sense of dread. "We have made a terrible mistake," one founder wrote. We welcomed these humans as friends. We thought they were like us, curious and peaceful, seeking only knowledge and connection. We were wrong. They are something we have never encountered before. When other species are wounded, they heal. When humans are wounded, they become the wound itself. Another founder was more direct. They must be stopped. Not because they are evil. They are not evil. They have art and love and kindness just as we do. But they have no limits. When they are pushed, they push back without end. They do not understand the concept of enough. They will keep fighting until there is nothing left to fight. And then they will find something else to fight. They are a species without a ceiling. The final message was the one that chilled Kethva to her core. It was written by a being named Orin the Shepherd, the oldest and wisest of the founders. His words were simple and sad. We have decided what must be done. We cannot destroy the humans. We are not certain we could succeed. And the attempt might make them even more dangerous. We cannot negotiate with them. They no longer trust anyone beyond their own kind. So, we will do the only thing we can do. We will make them forget. We will seal their system behind barriers they cannot cross. We will erase their memories of the stars. We will remove all record of their existence from the archives. And we will watch them always to make sure they never remember what they did. This is not justice. This is not kindness. This is fear. We are afraid of what they became. And we are even more afraid of what they might become if they are ever hurt again. The galaxy has seen many horrors, but it has never seen anything like humanity awakened. We must make sure it never does again. Do not wake them. Do not remind them. They must never remember what they are. Kethva stood alone in the dark room for a long time. The crystal's glow had faded. Its secrets revealed at last. She understood now why she had been summoned. She understood why this information had been sealed for 87,000 years. But she did not understand why the seal had been broken. She left the archive room and walked back through the endless halls of data crystals. Her mind was full of questions. Who had sent her the summons? Why had they wanted her to know the truth about humanity? And what did they expect her to do with this knowledge? As she reached the exit, she found her answer. A figure stood waiting for her near the great doors. It was tall and thin, wrapped in robes that shimmered like starlight. Its face was hidden, but its voice was ancient and tired. You have seen the records, the figure said. It was not a question. Kethva nodded. Who are you? I am a keeper. We are the ones who watch. We have watched for 87,000 years, monitoring the sealed world, making sure the humans never remember. Why did you summon me? Why did you want me to know? The keeper was silent for a moment. When it spoke again, its voice was heavy with something that might have been sorrow. Because we have failed. 7 days ago, a human probe crossed the barrier. It was small, primitive, built with technology they developed on their own after we erased their memories. They have spent 87,000 years climbing back to the stars. We slowed them. We did not stop them. Kethva felt her blood run cold. What are you saying? I am saying that the humans have found their way back to space. They will soon discover that they are not alone in the galaxy. And when they do, they will have questions. Questions about their history. Questions about why they have no memory of the stars they once traveled. Questions we cannot answer, Kethva whispered. Questions that might make them remember. The keeper stepped closer, and Kethva could see the fear in its ancient eyes. 87,000 years ago, humanity lost 17 billion of their people and became something that destroyed an entire species. Today, they have 8 billion people on their homeworld alone. They have changed in ways we do not understand. They have built philosophies and religions and arts that we have never seen before. Have they become something new? Something better? Kethva asked, hoping. The keeper did not answer immediately. When it did, the words were careful and slow. We do not know. That is why we have summoned you, Ambassador. You are known throughout the Concord as a diplomat, a peacemaker, a bridge between species. You have ended wars and built alliances that lasted for centuries. You want me to make contact with them? We want you to find out what they have become. We want you to discover whether the humans of today are the same as the humans of 87,000 years ago. And if they are. The keeper paused. If they are, then the Concord must prepare for what is coming. The galaxy thought it was safe. The galaxy believed that the monsters of the past were gone forever. But monsters do not stay forgotten. They wake up. And when they do, they remember. Kethva looked up at the stars through the great glass ceiling of the archive. Somewhere out there, in a tiny corner of the galaxy, a species was waking up. A species that had once burned the stars with its rage. A species that the entire galaxy had chosen to forget. But forgetting did not make something disappear. It only made the return more terrible. She made her decision. Tell me everything, she said to the keeper. Tell me everything about the humans, their world, their culture, their history since the forgetting. I will need to understand them if I am going to speak with them. The keeper nodded slowly. There is much to tell. They are a strange species, Ambassador. In the time since we sealed them away, they have done terrible things to each other. Wars, cruelty, destruction. But they have also done beautiful things. They have created art that moves even us ancient keepers. They have built societies dedicated to justice and kindness. They have struggled always to be better than they were. Then perhaps there is hope. Perhaps. The keeper's voice was tired. But remember the words of Orin the shepherd, the humans did not destroy the Kathmari because they were evil. They destroyed them because they were hurt. Goodness and destruction are not opposites in the human soul. They live side by side, and the wall between them is thinner than we can imagine. Kethva turned away from the stars and began walking back to her ship. She had a long journey ahead of her. A journey to a small blue planet orbiting an ordinary yellow star. A journey to meet a species that the galaxy had tried to forget. A journey that might decide the fate of every living being in the universe. Behind her, the keeper watched her go. And in the silence of the archive, surrounded by the memories of 100,000 years, it spoke one final warning that Kethva did not hear. Be careful, Ambassador. The humans are not what they seem. They are never what they seem. And when you think you understand them, that is when they are most dangerous of all. The stars burned on in the endless dark, keeping their secrets. And on a small blue world at the edge of the galaxy, 8 billion humans looked up at the night sky, dreaming of wonders they could not remember. But deep in their blood, deep in their bones, deep in the ancient parts of their minds that no forgetting could touch, something was beginning to stir. Something that remembered. Something that had been waiting for 87,000 years to wake up. 87,000 years before Ambassador Kethva opened the sealed records, the galaxy was a different place. The Concord of 12 was young then, only 10,000 years old, still growing and learning. The founders who had created it were still alive, guiding the alliance with wisdom gained across millions of years. In those days, the galaxy was full of hope. The first human ship to leave its home system was called the Wanderer. It was a small vessel, barely capable of traveling faster than light, held together with technology that the older species would have called primitive. But the humans who built it did not care about its limitations. They cared only about the dream it represented. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Wanderer as it prepared to make its first jump. She was 43 years old with gray streaks in her dark hair and lines around her eyes from years of looking at stars through telescope lenses. She had spent her entire life preparing for this moment. All systems ready, her navigator reported. Jump drive charged and stable. Elena nodded. Around her, the crew was silent. They all understood what this moment meant. For all of human history, they had been alone. They had looked up at the night sky and wondered if anyone else was out there watching the same stars, dreaming the same dreams. Today, they would find out. Engage, Elena said. The Wanderer jumped. The journey took 3 days. When the ship emerged from faster-than-light travel, it found itself in a system that no human had ever visited. There were 6 planets orbiting a red star. And on the 4th planet, there were lights, cities, signs of life. Elena felt tears running down her face. They were not alone. They had never been alone. We're receiving a transmission, her communications officer said, her voice shaking. It's a greeting. They're welcoming us. The Sarthi were the first species that humanity met. They were tall and graceful with silver skin and large dark eyes that seemed to hold all the sorrow and joy in the universe. They had been watching humanity for centuries, waiting for the day when these strange, passionate beings would finally reach the stars. That first meeting was everything Elena had dreamed it would be. The Sarthi were kind and patient, answering the humans' endless questions with gentle humor. They told the humans about the Concord of 12, the great alliance that united the spacefaring species of the galaxy. They told them about the founders, the ancient beings who had guided civilization for millions of years. They told them about the wonders that waited among the stars, and the humans listened with hearts full of joy. Within a year, humanity had established contact with all 12 species of the Concord. Human ambassadors traveled to distant worlds, learning new languages and customs. Human scientists studied technologies that seemed like magic. Human artists shared their music and paintings and stories with beings who had never imagined such things. It was, everyone agreed, the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Human colonies began to spread across the stars. The first was established on a world called New Eden, a green planet with 2 moons that reminded the settlers of Earth. Then came New Shanghai, New Logos, New Sydney, a dozen worlds, then 2 dozen, then 50. Humanity grew like wildflowers in spring, spreading wherever there was room to grow. The colonies were full of children. Human children playing in the streets of cities that orbited alien suns. Human children learning languages that had existed for millions of years. Human children looking up at skies that held different stars than the ones their grandparents had known. 17 billion humans lived in the colonies by the time the Cathmari came. The Cathmar Dominion was not a member of the Concord. They were an old species, older than most, and they had chosen their own path long ago. They conquered, they enslaved, they destroyed. The Concord had fought wars against them before, but the Cathmari were powerful, and their territory was far from the core worlds. No one expected them to attack humanity. Later, historians would try to understand why the Cathmari did what they did. Some said they feared humanity's rapid growth. Some said they wanted to test the Concord's commitment to its newest member. Some said they simply saw weakness and struck, as they had always done. The reason did not matter. What mattered was what happened. The first attack came without warning. A Cathmari fleet appeared in the skies above New Eden and opened fire. The colony had no defenses. Humanity had not built warships yet. They had not thought they needed them. The Cathmari killed 3 billion people in the first hour. They did not just kill quickly. They killed slowly. They killed families. They killed children. They broadcast the deaths across all channels so that every human in the galaxy could watch. They wanted humanity to see. They wanted humanity to understand that there was no hope, no mercy, no salvation. On Earth, people watched their children die. Elena Vasquez was old now, retired from space travel, living in a small house by the ocean. She watched the broadcasts with the rest of humanity. She saw the cities she had helped build burning in the night. She saw the faces of people she had known, people she had loved, twisted in agony as they died. And she felt something change inside her. Not just inside her, inside all of humanity. The Concord sent messages of sympathy. They promised that the Cathmari would be punished. They spoke of diplomacy and sanctions and the slow wheels of galactic justice. Humanity did not listen. In the weeks after the first attack, something happened that the galaxy had never seen before. Humanity stopped fighting among themselves. Every nation, every faction, every group that had ever been divided by politics or religion or history, they all came together. They stopped being separate peoples and became one people, united by a grief so vast that it burned away everything else. And then they got to work. The Sarthi ambassador to Earth, a gentle being named Keleth, watched what happened next with growing unease. He saw human scientists working without sleep, driven by something beyond mere dedication. He saw human engineers building things that should have taken decades to design. He saw human soldiers training with a focus that seemed almost mechanical. "What are you doing?" Keleth asked the human leader, a woman named Director Chen. Director Chen looked at him with eyes that had not slept in days. "We are preparing," she said. "Preparing for what?" "For war. The Concord will handle the Cathmari. You do not need to." "The Concord did not protect our children." Director Chen's voice was calm, but there was something underneath it that made Keleth step backward. "The Concord watched while billions of our people died. So, we will handle the Cathmari ourselves. You do not have the technology. You do not have the ships. The Cathmari have been waging war for 2 million years." Director Chen smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. They have never fought us, Keleth reported his concerns to the founders. They listened carefully and they agreed that the humans should be watched, but they did not interfere. Humanity was grieving, they said. Let them grieve. Let them build their little ships and train their little soldiers. It would give them something to do while the Concord prepared its response. They did not understand what they were watching. In 3 years, humanity went from having no warships to having the most advanced military fleet in the galaxy. The older species had spent millions of years developing their technologies slowly, carefully, building on the work of previous generations. Humanity did not have millions of years. They had rage and grief and a burning need to make someone pay for what had been done to their children. They captured Cathmari weapons and figured out how they worked in days. They improved those weapons and made them more powerful. They invented new technologies that the other species had never imagined, weapons that could tear through shields like paper. Drives that could cross the galaxy in hours. Sensors that could find enemies hiding in the darkest corners of space. And when they were ready, they launched their attack. The human fleet was smaller than the Cathmari fleet. It was newer, less experienced, crewed by soldiers who had never fought a battle. By every measure that the galaxy used to judge military strength, humanity should have lost. They did not lose. The first battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 40 Cathmari warships were destroyed. The human losses were 3 ships. The Cathmari could not understand what was happening. They fought the way they had always fought, with overwhelming force, with cruel tactics designed to break their enemies' will. These strategies had worked against dozens of species for 2 million years. Against humanity, they did not work. The humans did not break. They did not surrender. They did not negotiate. They pushed forward, always forward, with a determination that seemed inhuman. When their ships were damaged, they kept fighting. When their soldiers died, others took their places without hesitation. When the Cathmari tried to retreat, the humans followed. The founders watched the war with growing alarm. They had expected a human defeat or perhaps a stalemate that would require Concord intervention. They had not expected this. They are not fighting like any species we have seen, one founder reported. They do not seek victory in the traditional sense. They seek annihilation. They will not stop until the Cathmari are completely destroyed. Surely they will accept a surrender, another founder said. No. The Cathmari tried to surrender on the 7th day of the war. The humans ignored them. They continued their attack as if no offer had been made. This is madness. We must intervene. We cannot. The humans have made it clear that any ship that interferes with their war will be treated as an enemy. And I do not believe they are bluffing. The war lasted 18 months. In that time, humanity destroyed everything the Cathmari had built over 2 million years of existence. They burned their worlds. They killed their soldiers. They hunted down their civilians and ended them without mercy. They erased the Cathmari from the galaxy as completely as if they had never existed. When it was over, not a single member of the Cathmari species remained alive. The humans had committed genocide. The galaxy was silent in the aftermath. No one knew what to say. The Cathmari had been cruel, yes. They had started the war. They had killed billions of innocents. But what the humans had done in response, it was beyond anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Director Chen stood before the Concord Council after the war ended. She was older now, her hair completely gray, her face marked by the years of conflict. She spoke calmly, without emotion. The Cathmari killed our children, she said. They made us watch. They laughed while our families died. And you? She looked at the founders with eyes that held no respect, no awe, only cold judgment. You did nothing. You sent your messages and made your promises and waited for us to accept our fate. We would have helped, one founder protested. We were preparing. You were too slow. You did not understand what we needed. So, we helped ourselves. Director Chen turned to leave, then stopped. We will not forget what happened. We will never forget. And if anyone ever threatens our people again, we will do the same thing. There is no force in this galaxy that can stop us. Remember that. She walked out of the council chamber. The founders sat in silence, trying to process what they had witnessed. Finally, the oldest founder spoke. His name was Oren, and he had guided civilizations for 5 million years. His voice was quiet, almost sad. We have made a terrible mistake, he said. We thought we were welcoming a new species into the family of the galaxy. We were wrong. We have welcomed something else entirely. What do you mean? I have seen many species in my time. I have watched them grow and change and sometimes destroy themselves. But I have never seen anything like humanity. When we are wounded, we heal. When we are hurt, we recover. That is the nature of life. To endure, to survive, to continue. Oren paused. And when he spoke again, his words carried the weight of ancient wisdom and fresh fear. Humanity does not heal when wounded. They do not recover. They transform. They become the wound itself, asterisk asterisk, and they make the universe share their pain. The Cathmari hurt them. And in response, the humans did not just defeat their enemy. They erased them. They made it so that the Cathmari never existed. What should we do? Oren looked at the stars beyond the council chamber windows. Somewhere out there, humanity was returning to their worlds, their grief satisfied for now. They had lost 17 billion people. They had killed hundreds of billions in revenge. The mathematics of their pain was beyond any equation the galaxy had ever calculated. I do not know, Oren said at last. But I know this. We cannot allow them to be hurt again. Because if something else threatens them the way the Cathmari did, they will not stop at one species. They will burn the entire galaxy to keep themselves safe. And I am not certain we could stop them. You sound afraid. I am afraid. Orin closed his eyes. For the first time in 5 million years, I am truly afraid. We have seen the future of the galaxy, my friends, and it wears a human face. The council dispersed, each founder returning to their own thoughts and fears. In the weeks that followed, they watched humanity carefully. The humans returned to their colonies, began rebuilding, began having children again. They seemed peaceful. They seemed normal. But the founders knew the truth. Beneath the surface, beneath the smiles and the laughter and the ordinary lives, something had changed in humanity forever. The wound the Cathmari had inflicted had not healed. It had transformed into something else. A capacity for destruction that slept quietly but never truly disappeared. The humans had become something new. Something the galaxy had never seen before. And the founders knew they had to do something about it. But what? That was the question that would haunt them for months to come. How do you protect the galaxy from a species that you cannot defeat, cannot contain, cannot negotiate with? How do you stop a storm that only appears when provoked but destroys everything in its path when it arrives? Orin spent many nights alone, thinking about the problem. He walked through the gardens of his ancient world, looking up at the stars that he had watched for millions of years. And slowly, a plan began to form in his mind. It was not a good plan. It was not a kind plan. It was born from fear and desperation and the knowledge that there were no good options. But it was the only plan that might work. He would propose it to the council soon. They would argue, they would debate, they would resist. But in the end they would agree, because they would see what Orin saw, a future where humanity remembered what they could become and chose to become it again. That future could not be allowed to happen. Whatever the cost, humanity had to forget. The council chamber was silent as Orin finished speaking. The other founders sat in their ancient seats, their faces showing various shades of shock, disbelief, and fear. What Orin had proposed was unlike anything they had ever considered. It went against everything they believed about freedom, about the rights of sentient beings, about the sacred nature of memory itself. But none of them could say he was wrong. "You are suggesting we erase their minds," Kalora of the Venth said at last. Her voice was soft, almost broken. "You want us to take away their memories of the stars? To trap them on their home world? To cage them?" "Yes," Orin said simply. "That is monstrous." "Yes." Orin did not look away from her eyes. "It is monstrous. But so is the alternative. You saw what they did to the Cathmari. You saw how quickly they learned to kill. If we do nothing, and if they are ever hurt again, we could protect them," another founder suggested. "We could ensure that no one attacks them." "For how long? 10,000 years? 100,000? A million?" Orin shook his head. "We cannot guarantee their safety forever. The galaxy is vast and dangerous. Eventually, something will threaten them, and when it does, they will respond the way they responded to the Cathmari. They will burn everything around them until they feel safe again. Perhaps they will change. Perhaps they will learn. They will not change." Orin's voice was heavy with certainty. "I have studied them carefully in the months since the war. I have read their histories, their literature, their ancient stories. This capacity for destruction is not new. It has always been part of them. Throughout their history, whenever they have been truly threatened, they have responded with overwhelming force. They call it different things: justice, vengeance, protection. But the result is always the same. Total victory. Complete destruction of their enemies. No mercy, no limits, no end until the threat is eliminated. Then what you are proposing, it would not just be punishment. It would be protection. For them and for us." "Yes." Orin closed his eyes. "I do not like this plan. I have guided civilizations for 5 million years and I have never done anything like what I am suggesting now. But I see no other option. Humanity is not evil. They have goodness in them. More goodness than many species I have known. But they also have something else. Something that cannot be controlled or negotiated with. Something that sleeps quietly until it is awakened. And you believe that making them forget will keep it sleeping? I believe it is our best chance. If they do not remember the stars, they will not feel threatened by the galaxy. If they do not remember what they lost, they will not seek revenge. If they do not remember what they did, they will not know what they are capable of. The council debated for many days. Some founders argued that Oren's plan was too extreme, that it violated the fundamental principles on which the Concord had been built. Others argued that it did not go far enough, that humanity should be destroyed entirely before they could threaten the galaxy again. But in the end, they reached a decision. The plan would go forward. They called it the Great Forgetting. The preparations took several years. The technology required was ancient, developed millions of years ago by a species that had long since disappeared. It had been used only once before to save a world from a collective madness that had nearly destroyed it. No one had ever attempted to use it on an entire spacefaring civilization. Oren worked tirelessly, adapting the technology to work on human minds. It was delicate work. Human consciousness was different from other species, more complex in some ways, more fragile in others. The memory wipe had to be precise. It had to remove all knowledge of the stars, all memory of the colonies, all awareness of the greater galaxy, but it had to leave everything else intact. While Oren worked on the technology, others worked on the logistics. Human ships had to be recalled without raising suspicion. Human colonies had to be quietly evacuated. Human records had to be erased from every database in the galaxy. And a barrier had to be built around the human home system, a wall of quantum energy that would keep them contained without them knowing they were contained. The hardest part was the deception. Humanity still trusted the Concord. Despite the failures during the Cathmari War, they still believed that the older species were their friends and allies. They did not know that their friends were planning to cage them. The founders told humanity that a new threat had been detected, a danger that required the evacuation of all human colonies. The humans were suspicious at first, but the evidence was convincing: false readings, manufactured sensor data, fake transmissions from imaginary enemies. The humans believed what they were told because they wanted to believe it. They wanted to think that the galaxy was still the friendly place they had imagined when they first reached the stars. One by one, the human colonies were abandoned. The settlers returned to Earth, crowding into cities that were not prepared for so many people. The human government protested, demanded answers, threatened to investigate, but the evacuation was already complete before they could act. And then came the forgetting. Oren stood alone in his chamber as the moment approached. He had built the device that would erase humanity's memories. He had designed every part of it, tested every component, ensured that it would work exactly as planned. But now, with the activation only moments away, he felt something he had not felt in millions of years. Doubt. Am I doing the right thing? He asked the empty room. There was no answer. He thought about the humans he had met over the years. He remembered their joy when they first encountered the stars. He remembered their curiosity, their creativity, their passion for life. He remembered the way they laughed and loved and dreamed of things that seemed impossible. And he remembered what they had become when their children died. He remembered the cold efficiency of their war against the Cathmari. He remembered the look in Director Chen's eyes when she spoke to the council, the absolute certainty that she was right, that her people were right, that nothing else mattered. Both of those things were true. Both of those things were humanity. I am sorry, Oren whispered to no one. I am so sorry. He activated the device. The effect was not immediate. The technology worked slowly, spreading through the quantum substrate of reality itself, touching every human mind in the galaxy. It would take several days to complete, several days during which the humans would begin to forget. Piece by piece, memory by memory, Oren watched the process through his sensors. He saw human scientists stop their research, confused about what they had been working on. He saw human pilots land their ships and forget how to fly them. He saw human children ask their parents about the strange dreams they were having, dreams of burning colonies and dying stars and a rage that consumed everything. The parents could not answer. They were forgetting too. Within a week, it was over. Every human who had ever traveled beyond Earth's atmosphere had lost those memories. Every record of humanity's time among the stars had been erased. Every ship, every technology, every artifact of their brief journey into the galaxy had been removed or destroyed. Humanity was alone again. Oren felt the weight of what he had done pressing down on him like a physical force. He had saved the galaxy. He was certain of that. But he had also committed a crime that no punishment could ever balance. He had taken away the dreams of an entire species. He had stolen their future to protect his own. The other founders gathered to discuss what came next. The forgetting was complete, but their work was not finished. Someone had to watch humanity. Someone had to make sure they never remembered. "I will do it," Oren said. The others looked at him with surprise. "You? But your responsibilities?" "My responsibilities are here now." Oren's voice was tired but firm. "I created this cage. I will maintain it. I will watch over humanity until they no longer need watching. That could take millions of years." "Yes." Oren nodded slowly. "It could. But it is my duty. I cannot ask others to guard the prison I built." The council accepted his decision. They established the Silent Keepers, a hidden order that would assist Oren in his vigil. The Keepers would have only one purpose: to watch Earth, to monitor humanity, and to ensure that the Great Forgetting was never undone. Oren spent his remaining years building the systems that would outlast him. He created machines that could observe Earth without being detected. He established protocols for what to do if humans began to remember. He wrote warnings for future generations, explaining what humanity was and why they must never be allowed to reach the stars again. And then, when everything was in place, he did something that surprised even himself. He chose to end his existence. It was not suicide, exactly. Founders did not die the way other beings died. They could choose to disperse their consciousness, to spread themselves across the universe until nothing remained but a faint echo of what they had been. It was a peaceful end, usually reserved for those who had lived long enough to grow tired of existence. Oren was not tired. He was ashamed. "I cannot live with what I have done," he told the other founders before his dispersal. "I have saved the galaxy, but I have destroyed my soul. Every day I see the humans on their little world, living their little lives, not knowing what was taken from them, and every day I hate myself a little more." "You did what was necessary." "Yes. And that is exactly why I cannot continue." Oren smiled sadly. "Remember me not as a hero, but as a warning. This is what happens when fear guides our actions. This is the price of safety." He dispersed himself across the stars, his consciousness fading into the background radiation of the universe. The other founders mourned him, but they did not question his choice. They understood. What Oren had done was necessary, but it was not forgivable, not even by himself. The Silent Keepers continued their watch. Thousands of years passed. On Earth, humanity rebuilt itself from the ruins of the Great Forgetting. They did not remember the stars, but something in them still yearned for the sky. They built towers that reached toward the heavens. They wrote stories about gods who lived among the clouds. They looked up at night and wondered what secrets the darkness held. The keepers watched and worried. "They are reaching again," one keeper reported. "After 10,000 years, they have begun to understand the nature of the stars. They are building devices to study them." "Let them study," the chief keeper replied. "Study is not travel. As long as they remain on their world, they are safe." But the humans did not remain on their world. They could not. Something in their nature drove them upward, outward. Always seeking what lay beyond the horizon. They invented telescopes and satellites and rockets. They sent probes into the void. They walked on their moon and looked back at the tiny blue marble they called home. And they dreamed of going further. They will reach the barrier soon, the keepers warned the Concord. Their technology is advancing faster than we predicted. Within a few centuries, they will be capable of faster-than-light travel again. Then we must strengthen the barrier. We cannot. The barrier was designed to be invisible. If we make it stronger, they will detect it. And if they detect it, they will investigate. And if they investigate, they will ask questions. Questions that might lead to memories. The Concord faced a terrible choice. They could reveal themselves to humanity and try to explain what had been done, but that risked awakening the very memories they had tried to suppress. They could destroy humanity entirely, but that would make them no better than the Cathmari. Or they could wait and hope that when humanity returned to the stars, they would be different from what they had been before. They chose to wait. The keepers continued their vigil. They watched humanity grow and change over tens of thousands of years. They saw them make mistakes and learn from them. They saw them fight wars and then build peace. They saw them struggle with their own nature, always torn between the darkness and the light. They are not the same, one keeper noted after 50,000 years. They have built philosophies that teach them to control their anger. They have created religions that emphasize compassion and forgiveness. They have developed arts that allow them to process their grief without violence. But is it enough? The chief keeper asked. Are they truly different? Or are they simply waiting for something to awaken what lies beneath? No one could answer that question. The last keeper to serve before Ambassador Kethva received her summons was a being named Vith. He had watched humanity for 12,000 years, studying their progress, reading their literature, listening to their music. He understood them better than any non-human had ever understood them, and he was afraid. They are beautiful, he wrote in his private journal. Asterisk, they have created things of such wonder and meaning that I sometimes weep when I experience them. Their capacity for love and joy and hope is greater than any species I have ever known. But beneath all that beauty, the old fire still burns. Asterisk, we slowed them, but we did not stop them. They are climbing back to the stars step by step, generation by generation. Soon they will cross the barrier. Soon they will meet us again. And when they do, we will face the question that the founders feared 80,000 years ago: what happens when humanity remembers? Asterisk. Vith closed his journal and looked at the screens that showed Earth spinning in the void. 8 billion humans lived on that little world. 8 billion minds that carried fragments of a forgotten past. 8 billion souls that held the potential for both incredible beauty and terrible destruction. He did not know what would happen when they remembered. He did not know if the galaxy would survive what came next. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty: the forgetting was ending. One way or another, humanity was coming home. And this time, nothing would stop them.